I am Jim Collison and live from the Gallup studios here in Omaha, Nebraska, as well as our offices in India. This is Gallup's Called to Coach, recorded on July 24th, 2018. Called to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this live webcast, we'd like to answer those for you. You can join us in the chat room right below the main video window. Down there, available for you, bottom left-hand corner, choose Login, take out the guest, choose the guest account, take out the guest name, and those numbers. Put your name in. That way I know who you are, and you can ask those questions while we are live. If you're listening to the recorded version or have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions, you can send us an email as well. Actually, that's good for any questions that you might have, coaching@gallup.com, or use the contact form right there on the live page. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your CliftonStrengths coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch the video now downloadable and streaming audio. We call that podcasting. Available in just about any form you can find it in. All the links are available at our coaches blog. Head out to coaching.gallup.com. Pooja Luthra is our host today. She works as an advanced consultant. A little late for me. In our Gallup offices in India. Pooja, great to have you, and welcome to another Call to Coach.
Thanks, Jim. Good morning. Very, very warm welcome to the India's edition of Call to Coach. I'd like to welcome today's guest. His name is Vivasvan Shastri, works as a senior manager with Cisco. Well, I don't want to call him a technology executive because he is multifaceted, but where career-wise, he has been a technology executive for about 19 years, and this experience is spanning products and services, has a lot of global experience in managing business around product management, business development for Europe, China, India, Latin America, and the works. The reason I say multifaceted is, of course, he's a certified Gallup coach. He's also a published author, avid reader, and a blogger. And like I've always maintained, it's so much fun speaking with coaches who've managed to integrate the idea of strengths with what they do in the various things that they have done. And I'm very excited, Viva, that you're with us today. A very, very warm welcome, and thank you for taking time out for us today.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you, Jim.
So we'll start with the works. So tell me a little bit about, of course, we got to know each other when you did your certification program. So tell me a little bit about the journey around the Strengths Finder since then.
Oh, it's been amazing, right? For me, it's been a quest of my life to discover who I am, right? So this whole journey towards self-awareness was long due. And I had no way how to figure it out, to be honest, right? You read books, you try things, you meet people, you travel, right? You do everything to find out who you are. And this was, for me, one of the easiest way to find out who I am, right? And when I look at my 5 strengths, it was just like, aha, this is just me, right? So I think that whole journey of self-awareness, which was started around 18 months ago, still continues, right? I mean, I look at my life through the prism of my strengths now. And for me, that is pretty amazing. It is hard for me at times to explain why I do things to other people, but with my strengths, it becomes very easier, right? And it also gives me a little bit of a roadmap on how I can progress ahead as well. So it's been an absolutely amazing journey, right? And I look forward to continue with this journey for a significant long time to come, Pooja.
Give me a little background, Viva. I mean, you're coming from a technology background, etc. When you decided to get certified as a strengths coach, what was the motivation behind it? And has that met your expectations in terms of what you wanted to do with it?
See, for a techie, right, there are 2 inflection points in your career, right? When you start your career, it's all about skills, right? Your management, your managers, your companies, they just want you to acquire skills, right? Because that is what makes you very billable, very current. You can develop new things. Then you reach a point around 6 to 7 years of experience in your career, and you're wondering what next, right? And whether I should continue as a techie, whether I should move to some kind of a business management or product management or project management, or do something completely different, like for example, go to sales. So that is the first inflection point. Now, most folks at that point of time don't know how to make choices because they have an overdose of skills and a lot of knowledge. Today, the knowledge acquisition is fairly easy, but they really don't know their talents. I mean, they have no view of their talents. And right at times, they often make wrong choices, or they just follow folks whom they admire, right? So that becomes the first inflection point. Once you make a career decision there, The next one comes when you're roughly 15, 16 years of experience, where you have significant industry exposure. Like, if you've done stuff, you have experience, but you don't know what next, right? Now, for both these transition points, you have skills and knowledge, but you don't have is your own strengths. I mean, you don't have your own talent. And right, for the very first point of my life, when I was 6 to 7 years in the industry, I had no clue what I wanted to do, and I just followed my manager, right? Maybe right, maybe wrong, and I ended up doing all the things that you just described, right? I traveled places, was trying to discover who I am. Not a bad journey, a lot of learning, but it came at a cost of time, right? You lose a lot of time in building a career, right? I think you spend 4 or 5 years just trying many different things before you figure out where your strengths lie. Now I'm at a second inflection point of my career, right? Like which is where I have to plan maybe the final phase, right? The final 10 years or the 15 years of my career. And I was searching hard. I was really searching hard. And there I have to give credit to Cisco, my organizations, right? I think we've completely done away with the old way of kind of doing a performance evaluation, and we've completely moved to a strengths-based method of developing people. And that is where right now we were asked to read your famous book, right? And that's where my journey started, right? I did the strengths assessment and I said, this is not enough for me, right? I mean, I couldn't find a coach, right? I mean, though I had my strength assessment report in front of me, I went through videos, but I didn't find a coach. And for me, it was a little bit troubling because there in front of me, there was a code which would tell me something about myself, but I didn't know how to decode it. And that's what I thought that the best way to do this is to be a coach myself. And that's how I signed up for your coaching. It was started as a journey of self-discovery. It was nothing else. And I thought that maybe this is something that I can help myself with. And today, purely if you're into management, right? I think the old school of management where you're doing just managing and monitoring people and work is gone, right? Nobody wants a manager who's just overlooking what they're doing and telling them what they're doing wrong, right? I mean, they're looking for a coach as well. So via this coaching, for me, I have been able to get better at work as well, right? Because I don't look at my team in terms of what is wrong with them or what they can do better. But now I have completely changed the way I talk to people or kind of even do my one-on-ones with them, right? I always look for the strengths. I look for the words. I look for the verbs which will indicate what strengths they are, right? Those 5 questions like flow, right? Moments of excellence, brilliance, right? I kind of very consciously look for them in my one-on-ones as well. So it just really helped me to become a better manager as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you're talking about it, because a lot of times when we also do these courses, the one thing that we often hear is from technical people that, we are techies. This is what we are meant to do. What strengths are you talking about? Our work is pretty repetitive. So how can we use the idea of strengths? So tell me about a little bit about your approach around this. So I'm assuming that the team that reports into you, these are technical folks. These are, people who are coding, decoding, literally, if that's what I can say. So from their point of view, and as a manager who understands the idea of strengths, how have you been able to integrate the softer approach to literally the nitty-gritties of what they're doing day in and night out? I mean, I'm literally asking for myself, because that's a question I face every day. That what's strengths? I mean, all I'm doing is the work that I'm doing. So.
No, so there's skepticism, but I think you have to lead with stories, right? I think I didn't start with introducing the Strength Finder as a concept, but a few of the things that I learned, right, from you guys during the training, right? For example, examples of Andre Agassi, right? Great at skills, but didn't enjoy playing tennis. So you start with techies with these examples, people whom they can relate to, right? Whom they can identify, they can verify whatever stories we're telling are true or not. So I started my journey of introducing strengths purely by telling stories of people that people would know, right? I mean, work is repetitive and they would question, this is really fluffy stuff. And right, we don't know whether it works. But I think you start by telling stories of people who have been successful using their strengths. You talk from your own experience, right? I think sometimes when you get things wrong as well, you make yourself a little bit vulnerable by talking about where you are in the balcony with respect to a particular strength as well. And that makes it really real for people. And they say, yes, this is very human, right? I think, right? And this can maybe work for me. And that is when I give them a book, right? They take the test and I offer a kind of a 2 or 3 free coaching sessions for them so that they get to experience it, they get to live it. And that is how the journey begins, right? A few of the people have also gone on to to become coaches as well, right? A few people whom I tried this on, right? They were so inspired by the very concept of strengths, and they said, "Hey, this is amazing, and I really want to become a coach myself as well." So, right? I mean, it's worked, and being Cisco, I think Cisco has really supported this culture of strength-based development as well. So I have to give credit to my company as well for providing an environment, right, wherein a manager can fearlessly talk about strengths and pursue it as a way of development.
Have you been able to, as now that talking about the organization and Cisco, have you been able to use the idea of strengths and integrate it with some of the other initiatives that the company is doing, just to sort of not make it look like a standalone sort of a thing?
Not yet, not yet. To be honest, I am
Okay.
using strengths as a way to really engage my people, right? To become a team that really delivers excellent results. So it's a little bit has a performance orientation today, has a little bit of an engagement orientation today. Has not reached a company. I mean, I've not been able to take the work that are being doing cross company, but I think we've definitely made the start in improving engagement and making sure that we deliver the performance, right? Because, right, you will see, right, the way the team is perceived when they play from strengths is completely different, right? Even within the company, right? I think there is a sense of respect that you get, right? Right, and which is what we have seen in many team members where I have tried this.
Talk a little bit about performance orientation, because what again, some things that we hear is that once you start looking at the idea of strengths, maybe a couple of coaching interactions are all around self-awareness, and then people want to look like, now what can I do with it, which is also the right thing for a coach to address, that what can you do with it. So how have you managed to tie that piece of naming, claiming, and then finally aiming in context of the work that you do in terms of the strengths that you've provided feedback on?
Yeah. So the naming phase actually is the most beautiful phase, right, for most coaches, right? Because that whole aha moment, right, which comes in the first 2 sessions, I think that is, right, that stays with them for a very long time. Claiming takes a little bit time because people have a habit of only reflecting on the recent past. They don't go back in time where they were really at the peak of their game, right? So it takes a while for a coach to get those stories out. But in the aiming phase, I think a couple of cases where people wanted to become a manager in my organization, right? And they were always struggling for the code, right? I mean, here I am, here I've been for the last 12 years playing the role of an individual contributor, and now I want to move to a management role. What strengths can I use then, right? So that is where you would help an individual, right? At times, strengths give you that anchor point with which you can actually drive your behavior, right? The kind of initiatives that you take on, what you do at work. And that is what I've been able to do with Aim It, right? Take a few strengths and then use those strengths as anchor points to do something for the organizations, for the customers, or for other employees as well. And that gives them the visibility within the org, that gives them the platform within the org to really showcase their leadership skills as well.
Yeah. So one is, of course, what you're mentioning are individual journeys, etc. So have you had a chance to use strengths in a more collaborative way with the whole group together and things like that?
So, I do have a monthly team building exercise, wherein I use certain kind of activities which are there from the Gallup book. I have subscribed to that Gallup book for coaches where they can do team activities. So we pick up one activity per month. And when we did the strength activity, right, wherein you write your strengths in a piece of paper and then you shuffle the papers and then you have to find out and guess whose strengths are these, right? I think that was a beautiful exercise that actually bonded the team together as well, right? I mean, and from that day onwards, people kind of started pairing automatically, right? I mean, they would go to a specific person if they need their help on a specific activity as well. So yes, we do that on a monthly basis, and I found those activities to be very helpful. Plus, it helps in driving team engagement as well. I think team engagement is one thing. Once you get team engagement right and you get people to focus on strengths, performance will come, right? It is just a matter of time. You will see the team far more confident. They will take on more risk, right? They will bring their true selves to work, right? So it's not the same about repetitive work as well.
Yeah, no, that's very well said, actually. I mean, there are the 3 different prongs that are important. And also the other advantage this has is that it doesn't make strength sound like a 1-hour event. It's not a
Yes.
one-day training that has happened. I mean, it's something that is continuing. You're talking the same language. So the language part is really, really important. So you were mentioning before we started the call, we were about transcending the idea of strengths outside of work as well, which is what you've managed to do. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
So students, right? I think we have a young population in India, right? I think what people call as the demographic dividend or the demographic time bomb, right? There's a lot of young engineering students, young MBA students who pretty much go through the same process, right? I think they pretty much go to the same curriculum, the same exams and all, and they kind of struggle to figure out on what they should focus on, right? I think they just go for the latest fad that, hey, I'll get into mass communications, or maybe I'll do architecture, right? And they need a helping tool as well, to find out who they are. From what happens in India is that people follow whatever the current trend is without really focusing on what their talents are. And what we've been trying to do with a few colleagues is to kind of reach out to a few universities in India and get the concept of strengths introduced to the students far early, right? Because one regret I have, to be honest, is that today, after 20 years of experience, I am here. If I had the same knowledge about what my talents were maybe 15, 20 years ago, my career could have been completely different. My choices about what jobs I take on, what assignments I take on would be completely different. I've never used strengths as a way to kind of find a job, right? I always picked a job that sounded cool, with a cool brand, right? Maybe a great customer, maybe a great technology. But now I'm very conscious, right? The first thing I look in a JD is that, does this JD align to my strengths, right? Now, if you can provide this knowledge to students far earlier in their career, two things can happen. One is the churn within organizations, right? We have a very large iteration within most organizations, especially in the early in career brand, right? Where close to 50 to 60% of the people just leave after 2 years, right? That's because they picked up a job which maybe it's not really well suited to their talents, right? I think they've just picked up something what their friend advised them, what seemed cool, whatever skills they had. So here, if we can give them a certain amount of knowledge about what their talents are, they would make far better career choices. They would have far more fulfilling careers as well, right? I think those are the two issues that most organizations are working on. Skills can be taught, right? Skills can be learned, and we in India are really good at learning skills, right? I don't think there is anything that people here cannot learn, but here what we lack is an awareness of our talents. And that is where, if you can bring this concept to a few bright kids, I think they will have far better fulfilling careers.
Walk me through some techniques that you've used to do this. So, I mean, in terms of the tools, favorite tools, process to do this, I mean, both within the organization and outside. What is your brand as a strengths coach?
So I would say, right, the first thing, I think you should spend a lot of time just giving examples about where strengths has been successful. Right. So the first session, I just tell them stories about where I have experienced strengths being successful, right? We don't talk about the CliftonStrengths Finder. We don't talk about the assessment that they need to take, but just introduce the concept of strengths via some stories that you know, right? It could be people who are known and famous. It could be people that we know, right? So that is a big part of my first session, right? I just tell a few stories and get them excited, and we have to link it to performance and aspirations, right? In India, right, you just can't claim strengths as a way to know yourself better, right? I think that's a good story to tell someone who's far senior in their career. But for these young kids, I think you have to link it to their aspirations, right? They want to grow, they want to learn, they want to move up, right, the corporate ladder. So you have to link strength to their aspirations via a few stories. And that is how typically I start my sessions. My first sessions are all about that, right? Telling a few stories to get kids really excited about strengths. Two is where I really introduce Strengths Finder, right, as a concept, and I use some of the points which are there in the deck. And that's where I tell them that, hey, now we need to be ready to take an assessment. They have some questions in assessment and what I need to do. So that is a big part of my second session. The third one is the most important, where they really read and they come with a lot of questions, right? Because they read through the report immediately and they have questions. There's feedback, right? Some strengths sound very cool, like strategics, like some like competitive, right? And all are not that cool sounding. They don't want to admit they're competitive because it would mean that they're not team players, right? So that third part would be where they kind of really learn about who they are, right? And that is where the name it session, I think I really love doing the name it session via various phases. I mean, I go slow with the name it session. One is what I explain everything. The theme cards, very, very extremely important, right? So that I use the theme cards really well, right? Because to really more than the text, actually the theme cards will help you really explain what the theme is all about, right? And so that has been my really favorite tool to do that. Post that, right, we take a break, right? Because I think it's a lot for them to know who they are. They need some time to reflect and soak in what they've heard, right? Sometimes, yes, there is some denial, right? No, this is not me. Maybe I got some questions wrong. Maybe they haven't figured everything out yet, right? But I think you have to give them time for it to settle down. But when they come for the next time, I think they really get it, right? That, yes, this is who I am. And post the theme cards, what we do is the value cards that you did with us, Pooja, right?
Yeah.
So for folks who struggle to kind of relate to their strengths and kind of make sense what their strengths are, we also use value cards as a way to kind of get by, because people are very strong about their values, right? They're quite open talking about their values, right? I mean, at times they struggle about their strengths, but they are fairly somehow, right? I think they're fairly okay talking about their values, right? And plus their values are linked to their identity as well, right? I mean, who they are and what they want to be. So we use values as a way to kind of re-emphasize like strengths as well, right? So the value cards are very important. I then ask them to download the app, right? Because right, they need to recollect, right? So I tell them, hey, you better download the app. It has everything at the touch of your phone. It's very important. You will struggle to find your report the next time you want it, but make sure you have the app. Then the picture exercise, right? Where you pick a picture to kind of one picture, which is you, right? From all the pictures, very, very popular. Actually, you should have a digital version of it, right? For coaches to use, because you can't go around with those cards. But right, that is very, very important. And that image actually stays with people for a very long time, right? They may forget the names of the teams, they may forget the strengths, but that one picture actually stays with them throughout their coaching session as well. And then, right, so that is very, very popular actually. And that post that we get into the claim it, wherein I tell them that they have to tell me a story, and I give them a format as well, right? Because we really need to find really good stories, right, for them to claim their strengths. So I ask them to tell me a 5-10 minute story, and that's their homework for the next session. Most of them do a pretty good job, except a few where maybe I didn't do a good job in building trust, so they were not comfortable sharing, right? But most of the people were quite open and sharing the stories, very candid stories as well. And post the claim it, I think they're pretty much into autopilot, right? They know what they want, right? If you do the name it and the claim it well, right, the aim it is for the coachee to drive, right, and the coach to just take a back seat. Right. So my experience is, if you put a lot of emphasis on name it and claim it, you are well set for aim it, right? You can't rush into aim it, right? That is for the coachee to take the lead. And then by the time I get to the aim it, these folks are pretty much, they try experimenting after claim it, right? They try experimenting with their strengths. And when I tell them that, hey, don't do it. Don't try to use this strength on a Monday and that strength on a Tuesday and all. But they have a tool and they have a toys, so they want to play around. And at most times, they do pretty well, actually, right? And that makes it really real for them that, what, I tried that thing you told me about, and this is what my experience was, good and bad. So they have these things of playing around, toying around, and then they get real about aim it, right? And they say, okay, fine, this is what I need to do, and this is exactly what I'm going to do. So, for me, the aim it really...
example, we were around this. I mean, this is amazing what you just said. I mean, of course, it's so clear in your head, meaning you've done it so many times. But any example of a particular person or a particular team or a particular, anyone who you work with?
Without taking names, right? I think there was a gentleman.
Absolutely.
So there's a gentleman in Krakow, Poland, very competitive. So though he'll not admit it, very, very competitive, was stuck, right? I think he was a brilliant guy, started his career in India as a techie, then went on to do project management, and fairly successful at project management as well, right? Very high on significance, very high on competition. So right, this guy is the go-to guy if you have a project which is absolutely collapsing, right? And then what happens is that he ends up burning himself, because all the assignments he gets, right, are those which actually play out to a significance. And he's very conscious of the fact that for him to move to the next level, that competitive element comes in, that I have to be better than my peers, right? I mean, though he had a lot of challenges admitting it, but I think that drives his decision of assignments that he picks up, right? And he was not aware of it, but he was doing it, right? And so many times, right? This person would pick up assignments which would kind of really burn him out, but for him, his significance was never satisfied, right? The moment he'll reach a summit, for him, it is done. Now, what is next, right? What is the next mountain to climb? What is the next summit, right? So the dose of significance that he was getting was, right, in very limited supply, right? And he kept running from project to project to project to project. And that's what I told him that, hey, there's no way to satisfy your significance by just running from one project to the other project to the third project. You got to do something really big, right? And in times where life doesn't offer you those choices, you have to pick up something else, right? For example, pick up a hobby, right? Maybe learning a language, learning a guitar would feed into your significance, right? But now I'm very happy that, like, we've been doing this for the 9 months, and he's finally found a job in Switzerland, really good job, which would feed his significance day in and day out, right? And right, I wish him luck. I hope, right, he's found something and he's made the right choices. But this is where, strengths have helped people to make career choices as well.
Yeah. Great. I mean, I think the one common thread in what you've said for yourself, as well as the example that you give, is the idea of self-awareness. I mean, people need to first be aware before making any change. I mean, if you're constantly in denial, that's when the claiming it phase would take a bit longer for the coach to drive those examples out and all of that. So what has been the most fun part of your journey in everything that you do around strengths? The absolute fun part.
The absolute fun part is, so when I talk about my strengths with my family, I think, right, it's hard for family to accept your strengths, to be honest, right? Because they
all
see
the basements keep coming up.
Precisely, right? For them, right, they say, hey, I don't know how this is your strength, because I've seen exactly the opposite. Like, for example, for my wife, my maximizer would kind of be always in the basement. I'm never happy. My daughter told me that, hey, like, I work so hard and I do well in exams, and you tell me that maybe you could have done this better, right? Right? Right, there are times when I want to be alone with myself because, right, I am very high on intellection. So, right, and that is what bothers them. That, hey, this is purely family time on Saturday, Sunday. Not a good time to read a book, but those are the times you need, right, for yourselves. Right, so those are the things that have the most fun elements, right, around strengths as well. When your family kind of knows what your strengths are, I think that is the most fun part. At work, strengths bring. Does help people being quite authentic, right? Typically, people put on a show, right? I think they have an impression that, hey, if this is my title, this is my role, then this is how I have to behave. This is how I have to come across. This is how I have to dress. This is how I have to talk, right? So there is right? I mean, people are not truly who they are. They're not authentic, right? And people see through that you're trying to be like someone else. And what strengths does to you is makes you come across as a very authentic leader as well, right? And for me, I think that is the fun part, to see the real people come to work, right? Not only people, right, whom we hired for the job description, or how they would behave, right? Because that is when fun really happens, right? When people really bring themselves to work. And strengths gives you that anchor point and confidence, right? I think you're pretty cool with who you are once you know your strengths, right? You don't have to be somebody else. You can, right? It gives you the support structure to be who you are.
Yeah.
Right. And then still explain yourself and come across as a very rational human being. Right. That's a big advantage of having a strengths-based framework to help you grow.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it brings so much of confidence to who you are. Like you said, I mean, there is no longer any defensiveness about what you can't do. I mean, simply because, everybody will have their bottom five, so to speak. There would be things that I'm not comfortable with, and so be it. I'm just only human. So, but excellent. I mean, all of your examples have been pretty, they're pointing to the fact that you've almost holistically incorporated the idea of strengths, be it at work or at home and all of that. And that's how it should be. And that's what makes you a great coach, if you've been able to see those things for yourself as well. So great. Thank you for sharing that. Questions from the chat room, Jim?
One, you had talked about these, and don't ask me why I have them, but I do on my desk here. These picture cards, right? And sometimes it's a struggle. We sell the whole pack, right? This, and you had mentioned, it's big, thick pack, and it's a great opportunity. Not everybody has a chance to purchase those or get them in their region. Sometimes it's hard to get them. We've had coaches get make their own. And there's no magic behind the pictures, although we spent a lot of time thinking about what each individual picture would be. So there are some things there. But if you can't get a hold of them, you can't, you mentioned a digital version of this.
Yes.
You can create your own, as you're going into this, you can get some ideas and create your own digital version of this that you show. We actually license these, just so folks know, we license these pictures to make them available for purchase. And so you want to make sure in that case, if you're doing your own pictures, you've got the right licenses to do that as well. But that's very doable, like for a lot of people to be able to take these. Because again, when you're doing the exercise, the magic isn't that there's people playing soccer, right? Or football, depending upon what country that you're in. But the magic is in the conversation, right? That goes on around this with these pictures, And so I want to encourage folks that are listening to this. It's like sometimes don't get too hung up on the materials. Get hung up on what the materials mean.
Sure.
I just wanted to. Would you, Pooja? Would you add anything else to that?
Just the fact that be it these pictures, be it the value cards that you mentioned, be it all of the other material that you get as part of the certification. The one thing that I have heard again and again, and it is something that Vikas is very fond of saying, even when we're running the program, is that the material is very enduring. It's material that you can, sort of pick from, see what works, see what doesn't work. And coaches across the country who I have interacted with, Viva, they've been extremely, creative with the use of these pictures. So for example, somebody I know, so what they've done is that they've got these picture cards and they've just spiral bound them. So whenever they're going, so it's all in one place and you just get to pick, it's just a pack of spiral bound cards, or they've used these pictures to convert them into notepads or stuff like that. So people have been very creative around making sure that the idea is for it to stay top of mind. And this is my picture and it's so all of that. I mean, you'll be creative. I think you're amply creative in any case, but feel free to use them in whichever way works best.
Would you, Vivasvan, would you add anything to that? In your experience of being creative with
there's
materials?
a lot of desire to keep the picture, to be honest, right? I think the people who pick them, they want to keep the picture, and at times as coaches we have one set, so we struggle to share.
Yeah.
So what I do is allow them to take a picture of the picture and they can keep that right?
Yeah, kind of keep it as a
yes. Yeah, but I think the picture kind of really beautifully sums up what the strengths are, right? And people kind of right, you really know when they pick up the picture, I think you really get to know the individual, right? I think it kind of beautifully summarizes what the individual is all about.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great opportunity. We make these available. They're available at the summit, but sometimes they're difficult to get a hold of based on the region. And so if you do get your hands on them, or you get your hands on some packs of them, this has been a very, very, I was glad you mentioned this. This hasn't been mentioned in a while. This is a very, very popular exercise for people. It's incredible. I can hear kind of you said endearing, but I can hear kind of that, the importance of when I identify with this, it speaks something internal to me, right? It means something to me. Am I getting that right?
No, there's also an element, right? I think for a coach, sometimes the coachee doesn't say enough, right? They don't tell you enough things. And what the picture does is kind of really helps you to make sense of the unsaid, right? Because the kind of picture they pick, right, really tells us about who they are. So it's been, for me as a coach as well, I think that choice does reveal a lot about the individual as well.
Yeah, and I think early on, mostly it's not that people don't want to share. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, this is who you are. I mean, you really haven't been able to put the words around it. And now suddenly you have a structure in place telling you who you are. So sometimes it's easier to pick the picture than put it in words.
Yes.
So that helps.
I also on my desk have these theme dynamics cards, which have a bunch of words on them, right?
And I love also what we were mentioned.
I love I love the simplicity of just the picture. Like this. Okay, this is great. And sometimes we do this name it concept where we over talk the definitions, but the definitions can't get in the way of things here, right? I mean, it's really how people identify with these. And so I love and because I just will show a different picture than this has a completely different feel than this. Yeah. Right. And I love that and I love the way people approach that. Vivasvan, you've probably seen that a lot in the coaching that you've been doing, where these two represent completely different ideas.
Yes.
Would you say that's true?
Oh, that's very true. Actually, right. I think the picture does communicate in more than 1,000 words what an individual's core strengths are, the strengths from which they lead from also, right? I think they kind of identify, right, from the top 5, the top 10, what is a favorite go-to strength, right? We have, each one of us have strengths on which we rely on the most, right? That is almost like a default mode for us, and the picture does reveal that as well, right? But yes, like those pictures kind of help you to cut across boundaries of culture as well, because words and language have semantics and some syntax around it, right? And how people relate to them is very different from say one individual to the other. But given the good collection of pictures we have, right, I think you can cut through all that and really get to what are the core strengths of the individual. So I think those pictures have been very, very helpful for me.
Pooja, when we teach this, I think this is part of the teaching exercise, right? That we're doing. And when you give this out for them to start going through, have you ever watched the body language kind of change as they're working through? Pooja, you're shaking your head. Yes. Explain what you see in the room, because I think it also changes the way we approach things. I think it opens people up a little bit.
I'll tell you how it pans out. Now, when we do it as part of the course, Viva, I don't know if you remember, but it's part of a more complicated exercise, which is called the IM framework, right? Inside application, meaningful impact. And at the end of the activity, we ask you to pick the picture, which means before the activity, we are literally forcing you to write down for each of your talent themes, I am a coach who. So you have to complete that sentence after having highlighted your report. Now, this is still earlier on in the day. People have just sort of getting accustomed to the idea of their own strengths, etc. And suddenly we're asking them to write that very complicated sentence about I am a coach who for each of their talent themes. It requires a lot of thinking. It's not easy. People do struggle with it, and people struggle to see, okay, what does this talent mean in terms of being a great coach? So how can I lend my maximizer to being a great coach? How can I lend my input to being a great coach? Now, once that activity is done, more or less, people are sort of half baked around it. Even at that point, what we tell them is, now let's make it simpler. So, let's try and see what's your brand by incorporating everything that you've written, not in words, but by way of a picture. So that gives a sense of relief that, okay, a picture, I understand. So I don't have to put anything into words, because a picture would speak to me. I don't have to write about it. So when you lay down those pictures, I know of people who have been able to spot their picture in the span of 5 seconds. That's my picture. I mean, and there is no going back on that. That's my picture. And then there are, of course, people who are dilly-dallying. They want this also like me. This is also like me. And for them, I always tell them that it's one picture. So, you think about which one is most you, not because the picture is pretty, not because the picture is aspirational, but honest to God, honest to yourself, which is you will be one picture. Which one would it be? And then, sometimes with a very heavy heart, they'll say, okay, then this is my picture. Okay, then now you talk about it. So I think the activity that goes, why people picked up the picture that they picked, that's equally great, because a lot of times the same picture gets picked, but for different reasons. Jim, do you remember the picture in which the football team is sitting down, a little? I wouldn't call it sad or whatever. I mean, they're sitting down, huddled around, talking about what's happened in the game. That's a favorite picture, simply because every time at least 2 or 3 people would end up picking up that picture. And my only question to them is, okay, when you pick this picture, what stage of the game did you imagine it was? So, people with high positivity and high futuristic would say, oh, the game's only just begun. People with high restorative or context would say, it's, that one.
Yeah,
so people would say it's halftime, or some people would say, okay, they've lost the game, but they're able to see different things in the same picture because they're coming from their own filters. And that drives the point home that, I see the world with my filter. It's not factual as I think it is. It's my filter. So I love this activity. I really do. Very, very nice.
Boss, did you add anything to that?
No, I think she got it spot on, right? I think really people kind of really claim themselves in a little way, right? In their own personal way, they kind of they claim their strengths when they pick the picture.
Yeah, you see, it took me a while to find that one. It's
Yeah.
it's thick. It's just emotional. I think it brings out, it's interesting. We don't do this with music, but I think people would identify with a song or with lyrics in a song or with the way a song is played out. There could be some, it really gets to the emotional core, right? Those pictures allow us to get to an emotional core very, very fast. And, Pooja, you mentioned some find it right away. Some want to spend a little more time thinking about it. I have noticed in the room the whole atmosphere changes when the pictures come out, and it gets sometimes a little more frenzy or even a little more relaxed. I think people, they'll giggle over the pictures, they'll laugh over them, or you might have been in a room before that was kind of stiff and cold. The pictures really start to open. I think they really start to open things up.
Exactly. So when they get to talk about it. So I think one of the good things that we do as part of the program is give them so many opportunities, either in small groups or large groups, to talk about their strengths, because the more they talk about it, the more they become happier and the mood lightens and people start feeling, oh my God, that was a good discussion, simply because it was a positive discussion that happened about me. So that ends up, leaving people on some sort of a nice high.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Look what you spurred on here in this conversation. Just bringing up the cards, nicely done. We haven't talked about the cards in a long time.
No, we haven't.
No, we really haven't. And it's kind of fun to get back to basics. Pooja, we're kind of wrapping up our time here. Why don't you thank our guest for coming in?
Absolutely, Viva. It's been so nice chatting up with you, and so nice that you lend some understanding on, yes, techies are not above all of this or below all of this. I mean, the strengths is equally applicable to however technical your role might be.
Yes.
And thank you for sharing that. And thank you. And you're coming from somebody with experience such as yours, working in a company such as yours. It's very, very credible. And I'm sure it's very encouraging for everybody else who's trying to incorporate the idea of strengths in an environment which is extremely technical, so to speak. So, I grapple with when they're engineers and when they're techies, like, what my job is just what it is. So, but no, thank you so much. And I'm glad to hear that it can be incorporated. And thank you so much for sharing all of your examples. And thank you so much for almost encouraging me, because, when you round it off to saying that you've been using those tools, etc. As the teacher of all of that, it makes me feel really, really happy that, there was something that were taken back, and it makes me feel very nice and proud. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real great pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
Now, Pooja, I'm a techie, so I take a little offense to this. Are we difficult to talk to? Come on.
You're typical folks.
Well, we'll remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. Just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments. If you'd like to be a guest blogger, you got something in your head that you'd like to write down. We're looking like 400-600 words, something around strengths. We'd love to have you send that in to us. Send it to coaching@gallup.com. Put guest blogger in the subject line. That will get routed to the right folks for consideration. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program, as well as all the past ones. We call that podcasting. It's available for you on our resources, our brand new redesigned resources page. If you haven't been out there, if you see a mistake, by the way, let us know, because we just put a brand new page out there. We'd love to have you see it. Coaching@gallup.com. If you're interested in becoming a Gallup-certified Strengths Coach, you can see a list of all of our courses that lead to that. And Pooja, this is the point where I always say, do we have something coming up in India that you want to highlight when we think about courses that are available? Do you have anything you want to highlight?
Well, one is happening as we speak in Bangalore, but the
Can't
next
come to that one. It's too late to come to that one. Anything?
Too late to that one. No, we have another one coming up in Delhi in September.
And so if folks want to get information on that, they can head out to our courses page. Just go to courses.gallup.com. It's available there. One more thing, if you're listening on your iPhone or Android device, we'd love to have you rate and review. Those are available both there if you want to get that done. Easier on the iPhone, to be honest, than Android right now, but they're catching up. We also want to let you know, if you're listening on YouTube, you can subscribe there. A great way to know whenever we release a new video. They have a great way of notifying you when things are out. If you're listening on our Spreaker platform, we'd love to have you subscribe there as well. Don't forget to join our Facebook group, just facebook.com/groups/called-to-coach, TO. In that Called to Coach, we'll get you there as well. We have about 11,000 people have done that. And Pooja, we are getting, as of this recording, we are dangerously close to 19 million people taking the assessment. So if you go out to coaching.gallup.com, or if you go out to our Gallup Strengths Center page, there's a ticker there. I think it's going to turn over to 19 million at any time. Isn't that great?
Excellent. That's perfect. Amazing.
19 million. The crazy thing is we record this, by the end of the year, we have a good shot at hitting that 20 million,
20
on the
million,
last
yeah.
couple days of December. So we're pretty excited about that. So all those are available for you out there. We want to thank you for listening tonight or this morning. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.